Hello folks, Wild Man here. Some of you may know, probably very few of you know that I grew up Amish in the Midwest, Michigan and Ohio, Michigan and Indiana mostly. And I want to talk a little bit about it. A lot of light has been shown on the Amish in the last year with TV reality shows like Breaking Amish, Amish Mafia. And I feel like a lot of Amish are underrepresented in those, and also those are staged mostly, and there's some truth to them, but a lot of it's staged. I want to talk about the difference between a large Amish community and a small Amish community. In the large communities, the small communities left. 30, 40 years ago, they really started exiting the big Amish communities because of moral issues, because the large Amish communities allowed their young people to have premarital sex, party and drink, and basically lost their religion of the Bible. They quit, basically were became religious, but not according to the Bible, just their own personal standard of living. As long as you were part of their church, you were a good guy. If you argued against them or dissented in any way, then you were a heathen. So these small Amish communities, they didn't get to do the Rumspringa. You should know what Rumspringa is. Most of you probably do. Rumspringa is when you're 16, you join the Amish youth group. And in these large communities, it gives them a lot of freedom. They can do what they want. In the next 4 or 5 years, by the time they're 20 or 21, they're expected to come back to the church, and most of them do out of fear. But in the smaller Amish communities, they're not allowed to Rumspringa. There's a very tight rein kept on them. Where I grew up, we weren't allowed to even hardly play any sports like softball and volleyball. It was only allowed on certain special occasions. They believed that sports were evil and that it distracted you from the only thing they said is important, which was family and God, which are great points. Family and God are great, but they don't do that. Family and God are the least things from their mind lots of times. They're more interested in the church and obeying the church. They believe the church is the ultimate authority, that if Jesus Christ himself came back to the earth, he would come to their community. That's what they believe. So I grew up very sheltered, and at the age of 9, my mother's brothers and sisters left the Amish in their teen years. My mother was the only one. My mother and one of her brothers, and he ended up leaving when he was older, but my mother was the only one that was Amish, and my cousins would visit, and I wanted to leave. I felt this sense of loss when they would leave. I did not want to be a pilgrim. I did not want to be a standout in the world. I used to just wish that we could be a family and go on vacation and go to the zoo and play basketball with my dad and things like that, and those are not Amish things. The Amish structure, and it has changed a little in the last years, but 20, 30 years ago, it was very much, the kids were, they were free labor. Not that their parents didn't love them, but the Amish are very much not into showing affection whatsoever. Very few Amish kids ever get told that their parents love them or that they're important. They're disciplined and made to work. And has a lot of negative effects on Amish kids' life. And at the age of 9, I wanted to leave the Amish, but lived under fear. Even in my teen years, I would try to conform, it's just a lot of stuff that's very difficult to deal with when you're so torn that you want to leave. You have these, but you're afraid to. You're afraid to leave. It took me a long time to leave. I mean, I was 22 years old when I left, and I remember the night that I left the Amish as clear as if it happened yesterday. I had been out with some friends that weren't Amish, and most Amish people don't have a lot of non-Amish friends or don't hang out with them a lot in the small communities. In the larger communities they do more. But I had been out bowling, and I got home one night and I went to bed, and I just had this sense of dread and this sense of loss, this fear. I was just like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And suddenly a light bulb went off in my head and I said, I don't have to do this. I am free to leave. And from that day on, I was able to do that. Within 2 weeks, I left. And I was so happy. Such a big, huge burden off my shoulders. Just felt like I had escaped a prison camp in Siberia. One thing I want to say, as I said before, a lot of Amish get very positive reviews and a positive, the world or the government looks at them very positively. They can usually, on their grounds of religion, they can just about do whatever they want. But not as much attention is brought to the oppression of the Amish. A lot of their children's childhood is robbed. They don't get to play sports. They don't get to go to higher education. When I was 18, I was in a house fire and was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I had some great nurses. A male nurse and a female nurse were my two favorite ones, and they would talk about going to the gym, having friends, and I just wished I could be like them. And I wanted to go to college to be a nurse, and I made some phone calls, but the Amish are only allowed to go to 8th grade, so they have a very limited education. They're very much oppressed in that sense. But when I left the Amish, looking back, it took me a while to realize this, but it took me 4 years just to feel normal. Every time I would get in a conversation with a group of people, I didn't fit in. I didn't know about the movies that they talked about, the songs that they talked about. I didn't know how people dated in the real world. When I was an Amish guy, I was a funny guy. I could make people laugh. When I left the Amish, people laughed about different things. I was no longer funny. I lost my edge. It was like taking a bushman out of South Africa who's never lived in society and throwing him into Chicago. That's what it was like. It's definitely a drastic culture shock. And if you went to Amish today that left kids, most of them would say, oh no, I feel fine. They'd never admit it. Some of them don't even know it. And especially in large Amish communities where most of these people that leave are surrounded by ex-Amish and Mennonites and other people who know their way of life. I was not that fortunate, and I'm glad I wasn't. I was put into the real world. No one was ex-Amish or knew much about the Amish around me. And of course you take a lot of heat for being ignorant. I learned very quickly to watch my mouth, what I talked about, and never expose my ignorance. And I spent a lot of years watching movies, listening to songs, educating myself, so I would fit in, so I would know what people were talking about. And I became obsessed with knowledge, and I am to this day. Studying and learning are just amazing. They're my obsession. I'm obsessed with knowledge because I was starved for it. And another thing, when I left, I was starved for attention also, starved for love, starved to feel like I fit in just because of the cold way that the Amish are raised, the way that their society is. But yeah, it's Amish are very complicated. It's very rare that someone really describes them in a way that people can connect with and see how they really are. And I'm going to make some more videos on this. You know, I'm going to leave it at this right now. Just tell you my background, where I come from. And hey, I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to comment, criticize, whatever. Peace.